brand new album, Who Built the Moon? And Noel is here to talk us through the whole thing track by track. So how are you?
I'm good.
So it was, I guess, maybe nearly 6 months ago that you sat in this very room and mentioned for the first time, to my knowledge, that you had a new album, that it was ready to go, that you had recorded it with David Holmes, and that you were very excited about playing it to everybody. And you also explained how it was a departure for you, in that you started working in a way that you had never done before, in that you'd approached David or talked to David a few times in the past, and he wasn't into the way you were doing things, and like sending him demos and that kind of thing. So how did it all come together?
Well, I met David at a festival on my first solo tour. Me and Primal Scream were doing this thing in Isle of Wight or Jersey or something. I think it was Jersey. And I'd produced Primal Scream's album More Light, so he was hanging out with them. And we were all in my dressing room afterwards, and he introduced himself, and I was kind of, oh no, that's David Holmes, and I got all his records, and we were just chatting away, and we were talking about music and this, that and the other, football. And then when it came to making Chasing Yesterday, I did what I thought were the demos, and I thought, I'll call Dave, I need a producer to maybe take it somewhere else. And so I called him, and he came to London, and to his credit, and I'll never forget this, I played him the tracks, there's Riverman and Ballad of the Mighty Eye and all that, and he just said, they all sound finished, And I was like, really? I hadn't even started. I'd done about 2 weeks work on it. And he said, I don't really work like that. I like to be involved from the ground up. And I was like, I really hope we might make a record together. And then he said, well, look, if you want to make a record, come to Belfast and we'll just do another record. And I said, well, what about the songs? And he said, just do it in the studio, which was kind of daunting at first. But so what I would do is I would work 2 weeks in London on Chasing Yesterday, and then go off to Belfast and work 2 weeks on that, and then come back, and I was making them concurrently. But I think if I hadn't have been making Chasing Yesterday, I might have felt a bit daunted by the prospect of, well, when's this record going to be finished? When's it even going to be started? But because I had this other thing going on, Chasing Yesterday was like the anchor that kind of kept me grounded almost. And it was good in a way, because it was a good 18 months to 2 years before this Who Built the Moon started to take shape. I hadn't completed anything in over a year, and I was thinking, well, what? Which is why we never announced it. It was like, what are we doing? Seem to be just noodling at the minute. Well, then as the years went by, and you'd make great leaps forward 1 week, and then maybe another week you'd be in the studio and nothing would happen. But it was all a fascinating process.
So you would fly over to Belfast with just a guitar?
He said to me, bring one guitar, preferably one you've never played on a record before, and some effects pedals, preferably some you've never used before, and then we'll start from there. And the night I got to, it was a Sunday night, I got to Belfast, and we went around to his house, and we were having a drink, and we were playing records, and he was saying, what do you think of this? And it was all not avant-garde stuff, but real obscure stuff. And he was saying, do you like this? And I'd be saying, yeah, it'd be like some krautrock or something. And he'd say, we should do something like this. And put it to one side. And then, we built up a stack of music. And then the morning I arrived at the studio was the day that Lou Reed died. And so we spent the first morning reminiscing about that, and, oh, God, he's gone, and all that kind of thing. And then he played me, on the very first day, he played me Chewing Gum Kid by The Ice Cream, which I'd never heard, which has got the sample which became Holy Mountain.
Right.
And he said, what do you think of this song? And I was like, yeah, it's good. And he said, but what do you think of that riff there? And I said, yeah, that's amazing. And he took a sample of it, and we looped it, and he said, do you think you could write a song around this? And I thought, if it kills me, I'm going to do it, because it's so annoying. It's going to be brilliant. And the whole thing just went from there, really. And it was like a voyage of discovery. We would listen to French pop, and then I would start things with that in mind, like a vibe that was similar to that. And like I say, they were all snippets of music for a couple of years, maybe a minute long, and they would just go round and round, and it was up to me to try and write stuff around them. And I went out on the road for a couple of years, and I'd do weeks here and there, and you'd add a bit more, and maybe a chord change would come, or then he would get his mate as a keyboard player to put some keyboards on, and that would take it somewhere else. So it was all moving forward bit by bit. And then one day I nailed Holy Mountain, and then it all started to fall into place after that.
Right, because I mean, what you described is just the two of you working together, and yet when you listen to the album, it's got all these things. It's got strings and backing singers.
It was the two of us in Belfast for the bulk of it, and then after my tour finished, we came to London, where session musicians and all my equipment is, in a bigger studio, and that's when it started to really take leaps forward. But the guy that played bass on the entire album, I've never met him, and he's never set foot in England to do it. He did it down an ISDN line from Los Angeles.
Wow!
And I know of the guy. He was in a band called Jellyfish. His name is Jason Faulkner, and I know of him. And he used to play for Beck, and he's a big session guy. And he would. Yeah, I've yet to actually be in the same room as him. And the keyboard player was doing it by Skype. You know, it was the entire opposite thing that I've ever done. You know, my thing with Oasis and the High Flying Birds was in a room with a bunch of people with eye contact. And there I am, you know, at 2 p.m, talking to a guy on an iPad, and it's 4 a.m, and I can hear the song coming through his speakers, and he's playing this. What do you think of this? And maybe if I do that. And I'm like, this is so far out. It's unbelievable. And it was all kind of, it was all like that.
That's amazing.
Very odd.
We'll talk about the process, I'm sure, as we go on, but we should talk about Fort Knox, the opening track to the album. And in some ways it sets up the diversity of the album very well, doesn't it? Because it's not what people would necessarily expect from Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds.
And I have to say, when the first thing that people would have heard was the trailer that was put out, and I put that trailer together, and I deliberately decided to put on fragments of everything that was so far removed from anything that I'd done before. And I thought, I'm going to test this mob who've been following me for the last 25 years, and we're going to see how into it they are. I got to say, I wasn't expecting the reaction that I got, and I might have given my audience a bit more musical credit than they deserved, because it went mental. Like, there was, you know, this is sacrilege, you know, what is he doing, kind of thing. And me and Dave were quietly sending each other emails, kind of laughing. And but how Fort Knox came about is a story that's been well told so far. But we were in the studio. We go in the studio the day that Fade by Kanye is on radio, and I've heard Kanye in the morning, and it blew me away. It reminded me of all great acid house music we used to listen to in Manchester from the '89, and I excitedly arrived at the studio and was saying, "God, have you heard Kanye's new tune?" So we got it up on the big speakers, and we were buzzing off it, and he was saying, "Oh, I didn't know you're into Kanye." I'm like, "Well, I'm not really. I like him as a dude. I think he's far out, man. I like a few of his tunes, my favourite being this track, The Power." So we said, "I'll put it up." So we put it up on the big speakers, and he instantly said, "You should do something like this." And I was listening to it going, "What? That's just, what? No, I'm not doing anything like that." And he said, No, come on, man, we should do something like this." And The Power became the template, with the chanting and the bass, and the bass being the main riff. And of course, no one's going to be rapping on it. But on that track, there was quite a few vocals, and it wasn't really, what I was singing wasn't really working. And it was only until I started to take elements out of it that the space began to appear. And what you hear now is just like a stripped down version of this track. And I'm not sure why it ended up being called Fort Knox. I don't. Some of the tracks, they like the interludes are called Wednesday because they were recorded on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And of course, because they're just snippets of music with no words and no choruses, you have to call them something. You can't number them. So I'm not sure why it ended up being called Fort Knox, but it's a brilliant title. And so when we get to finishing it off, David said, do you think it'll go on the album? And I said, go on the album? I said, it's going to be the first track. And he was like, wow. He said, that's pretty brave. That's going to take some balls to do that. And I was like, it's about time though. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a great tune. It doesn't really. If it hadn't had my name attached to it, if you'd have played that on anybody's radio show and said it was whoever, it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Because it's got my name attached to it. There's kind of like people throwing the pens down at work, going out. I'm not having this. Drum machines, you know. But it's brilliant. I have to say, I was so pleased at the way it came out. And then when we got the backing vocalists in and we were all in the room together singing it, it's an amazing piece of music.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And I love the female vocals on it. And there was that drill or an alarm clock that runs through the last half of the track.
I initially thought it was a pneumatic drill. I think it is like a toy alarm clock. Because what would do, I only work from midday till 6. And this is what David really enjoyed about working with me was I would leave at 6 and I'd say, you can do whatever you want now. And I would come back and so you can play around with it for a bit. And I would go on most nights with a song would be, yeah, it kind of sounds good, it might be good. And I'd come back the next day, would have sat up all night with an engineer and really got into the vibe of it and would have tried different arrangements and chopping it up differently and getting session musicians on Skype. You get back the next day and go, wow, it really is going somewhere now. So he was buzzing off that because he said usually you've got the artist standing over your shoulder, you know, saying, oh, what are you doing there? He said he felt like he was part of it, you know what I mean? So the next day get in and there's this alarm clock halfway through the second half of the song. And I was like, I'm not sure why I ended up so loud on the finished mix, but it just felt right. It felt like it was a wake-up call to everybody. A wake-up call to people who've been listening to my music for the last 25 years. It's kind of like, wow, what's this, you know? And I mean, I've got to say, people who've been following what I do shouldn't be too surprised. I mean, you know, the Right Stuff from Ballad of the Mighty Eye and What a Life and Riverman were kind of not really what you'd associate with what I did in Oasis. And of course, working with Goldie and the Chemical Brothers in the past. But it makes me think there's a new generation of Oasis fans who've come along who are not aware of that. Like 15-year-olds who have got a kind of an idea of what you should be, who've clearly watched Supersonic, you know, recently, and have probably all got Union Jack guitars and all that kind of thing. Bless them. But it's a great way to start a record. It's going to be a great way to start the gigs as well.
Right, so that's going to be the set opener.
Yeah. We're going to attempt to pull it off live, although I'm not sure it's actually going to work. We haven't rehearsed any of it yet, but we're going to have fun trying, that's for sure. Yeah,
that would be amazing. And will you follow it with Holy Mountain, which is the second song on the album?
Initially now, how the set list is I wrote it out is playing the entire first side in order. And then as the gig goes on, splitting, then it starts to get more of a trip of what you've done in the past and all that. But the first side on this album is so strong, up to Be Careful What You Wish For, really. It's so strong, it feels that they're all going to come into each other live. Saying that, it'll all change when we start rehearsing it in January, so who knows?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and it's so upbeat. I mean, that's one of the great things about the new record. It's so upbeat.
Yeah.
And Holy Mountain is just such a joyous thing to listen to, I think. And it's been really interesting playing it on the radio and looking at the reaction to it, because people have been citing all sorts of references, and it's almost as if you've managed to combine all these different eras of music in one song.
Well, I must say, out of all the things that I've read, the one thing that was never played to me in the studio was Ricky Martin.
Well, you see, I still haven't heard the Ricky Martin song that people keep talking about.
She Bangs.
I still haven't heard.
Do you know what? Right, the only similarity is his tune goes, as I remember it, she bangs, she bangs. That's it. So it's the phrasing of the words, like there's a word she felt, that's it.
Right.
I mean, I understand people have got mundane jobs and they've got nothing better to do, so they're kind of like, you know, commenting on stuff. But yeah, it's got a bit of Diamond Dogs in there. It's got a bit of Roxy Music doing Canned Heat in there. It's got The Ice Cream. It's got Plastic Bertrand. But, you know, when you're making up stuff in the studio and the clock's ticking, it's a way of working which I was like, I would never have thought I'd be into it, because people are sitting there going, so what are we doing today then? And you're like, well, I better come up with something here, you know. And usually, so this is pure expression. It's not thinking about it at all. And it's David jumping out of his chair going, that, do that again, you know. So he's coming at it from, he's not got any inhibitions about my music. And I'm kind of going with him. So it's a real collaboration, if you like. He's like, out of all the influences on the record, his vibe is the biggest.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting combination. I think that he's all about vibe and the sounds and the mood and all that. And I'm all about the songs. And we would have these discussions of, you know, I'd say, but I can't do that in a song. You know, I've got to go and play this stuff live. And he's going, nonsense, it'll be fine. And it was a kind of him going out there and me kind of pulling it back a little bit to where we've got it now, where it's like it's a combination of both our styles, I think.
Yeah, well, but it works so well, and it does create so many great moods. I mean, Holy Mountain is so uplifting, it feels joyous, you know, and Holy Mountain, we reached it when you found love. Is that the idea? Or?
Yeah, and then you know, we'll get to it eventually, and then you get into the intimacy and the darkness of Be Careful What You Wish For, which was a message to my children, one of whom is sat down there. And then, you know, there's the interludes, and it's easily the best record I've ever made. It was easily the most fun record I've ever made, because we didn't really know where it was going until it was finished, you know. And I kind of dread making another record the other way, because you kind of know what's coming. Do you know what I mean?
So much to talk about. Keep on Reaching. There's brass on this record. You're not telling me that was Skyped in?
No. My guys who play with me did that in London. But we were listening to Sly Stone at the Isle of Wight was the inspiration behind that. A lot of the songs came out of conversations of, if they weren't records that were played, then as the song started to take shape, David would say, yeah, why don't we try something like this on that? And he'd play that to the brass guys. And but Keep on Reaching, that came out of you know, Sly Stone and some other odd soul records, but not stuff that I was aware of. It's like, I mean, David he's a fantastic DJ, as we all know, and that's his, you know, and he does brilliant podcasts, and he's got a deep collection of records, and he'd be saying, I had the guitar riff, ding, 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 and then he would pull out something and say, well, try it like that, you know. And I don't know where the title came from, or where the refrain, can you keep a secret? Like I say, you're just in these moments of inspiration where, you know, to go to a microphone, if there's a studio and it's just, even if it's just three of us, which would be me, Dave, and Emre, our engineer, and it'd be like a thing going round, and he'd say, we'll get some vocals on it now and see what it's like. So you've written nothing, you've got no melody, and to stand there with headphones on and think, I don't know what I'm doing. You've got no words, but you're just going, you know, you're like na-na-na stuff, you know. And that's how that came out. And I think it was David that said, are you saying Keep on Reaching there? And I was like, probably. Why? And he's going, that's a brilliant title, let's call it Keep on Reaching. I was like, okay. And all the big, you know, Marvin Gaye drop down in the middle. And then, like I say, when we moved to London and the girls turned up, two of which had been, these two girls arrive at the studio at the pool in Bermondsey, and they come in and they're like South London girls. All right, darling. And got into one of them. Do I recognise you? You're famous. She said, no, darling, I've been on the X Factor. So one of the girls had been on the X Factor. Right. And I said, I'm sure I've seen you on the TV. He says, yeah, I've been on the X Factor. And these two girls did all the backing vocals. They were amazing. And another way, like usually if I've written a song and it's not really in my key, it's just easy just to pull these songs down and start again and re-record them. But we had this thing that David would say, we're going to stick to whatever it is because it'll take you away from what you've done before and make you think of melodies in a different key. That's as high as I've ever sang in my entire life, and I've got to tell you, I won't be doing it in that key live. We've knocked it down a bit.
It sounds great, though. I mean, I was going to say, I mean, the vocals that you've come up with for these songs do sound different. You know, there are parts of your voice that I don't think we've heard before, and it sounds very soulful on Keep On
Reaching. It's because there's a discipline to it where it's just like he was saying, you know, anytime I would come up with anything or start to change things slightly to suit my voice, he was very quick to say, that just sounds like what you sound like now. And I'd be like, yeah, but it's great though, you know. And he's saying, yeah, but come on, you've done that before, man, you know. And he would always stop me being lazy. That's what it was. He would stop me being lazy. Because if I'm a person who can sit at home and write 16 songs in a year on an acoustic guitar while I'm watching the telly, that's easy for me. And he's the first person that ever said to me, you're the best at that. You're great. No one's going to deny it. It's undeniable. You're the best. But don't you want to do something different for once? And I was kind of got on board with it, you know. And so some of the vocal melodies, it's like it's nothing I would ever try before, you know. Mine are all derived from the 60s, you know. And this is so not derived from the 60s, this record. Maybe one song and a couple of riffs here and there, but other than that, it's quite 80s sounding, I think, for me, you know. And but it was the thing of stop being lazy, you know, try something different.
Yeah.
You know, and I would get on from the studio many nights, walked in and Sarah would say, what have you been doing today? I'm like, no idea. I don't know what I've done today. Messing around on a kazoo for 7.5 hours. You know. And another thing, you'd get into, you'd work on a piece of music for like 6 hours and then you wouldn't hear it again for a year and a half. And you'd say, what about that thing we did that day? Oh yeah, never mind that. Have you got any riffs? You know, I'd be like, so he's always throwing things at me dead fast, you know. And
so in terms of like the brass and then the string arrangements and brilliant strings on Keep On Reaching, where would they come into it? So would David have arranged these, or would you have to come up with some arrangements, or would it be as spontaneous as you're describing?
Because I'm going off back to London and working on Chasing Yesterday, so I've got a whole other thing going on. And I was saying to him, well, you're a producer. Produce it, you know. And he would say, you know, he'd email me and say, oh, I did some great strings on Keep On Reaching. Keep On Reaching the day, and Kiefer's our keyboard player, he did this great part. And then he'd email it to me, and I'd listen to it and either say yes or no, you know. And the things that I said yes to got kept, and then things said no just got binned off, and that was it. But I didn't say no to a lot, I've got to say. Everything that people came up with, because it was so different, I was like, why not, you know. And I guess if you've got the right attitude and you're entering into it with a spirit of adventure, you might as well go with it. Because I've still got this other album here that's going to be #1, you know, and it's going to have all the things that people love about what I do on it. It's going to have enough weird stuff to keep me interested. So this, no one knows we're making it. I can bin it off, you know, like I did the Amorphous things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it goes too far. And but luckily it didn't, you know.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's a Beautiful World is the next song. This is one with some French spoken word that a lot of people have been talking about. And obviously we saw those performances that you did for Later, which featured the person who does the French spoken word bit. She also played scissors. A lot of people like talking about the scissors. I absolutely love the scissors. I'm all for it. Are there scissors on the recording?
There are no scissors on the recording. She didn't bring them to the studio. So we'll deal with the scissors now, shall we?
Yeah.
So what happened is, on when we're doing we're rehearsing to do it on Jules. Charlotte Mariano, the Scissor Queen, is doing the announcement through a megaphone through a child's megaphone, and trust me, if she presses, there's a lot of buttons on this megaphone. If she presses, the one that she presses to speak is right beside one that plays very loudly when Irish Eyes Are Smiling. So there was a few teething problems, and I was praying that they wouldn't be that in the middle, because that would have been too much for the squares to handle. So because the announcement doesn't come in for about 2 minutes, I said to her, can you play the tambourine or something, so you're not just kind of stood around? And she did that thing that all, French are quite arrogant, and like French women in particular. She kind of said, I will not play no tambourine. And I was like, well, can you play the shakers? I will not play no shakers either. And I was like, oh, well, you're going to stand around. She says, I'll never forget it. She says, I play the scissors. And I was like, and at that point I took my in-ear monitors out and said, what did you say? Did you say scissors? And she said, yeah, the scissors. And I was like, how does that? And they're herb scissors, right? They've got 4 blades, right? So they're not just like a pair of scissors you get out of the kitchen drawer. So we got out the phone, and she plays the scissors in her own band, who are called Le Volume Courbe. It's like psychedelic, acoustic, French thing. And these scissors, when she plays them, sound like a backwards hi-hat. They kind of go shh, shh. And so the next day she brought them in, started playing them. And I remember saying to my bass player, just leaning in, going, if this is not the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, I don't know what is. There's a French woman in a cape playing the scissors. And Russ went, your kid's going to glass himself. And so we get to Jules Holland, and Jules is gone, she's playing the scissors. And I'm like, yeah. And he went, wow. And I went, do us a favour before we do the live one, because she's the only scissor player in the world. She's in my band. No one else in the world is doing this. I said, mention it's the first time ever on British television. And to his credit, he did. And it's become a thing. The internet went into a meltdown. So when I was in Manchester, I'm rambling now, but I was in Manchester on the Saturday night when it was broadcast on the TV, and sat in the front seat of a taxi going through the town centre. The taxi stopped to set traffic lights, and I was just talking to someone else in the back of the car, and I turned around, a big gang of lads had surrounded the car, and they were all going, Caesars, 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 where's the scissor player? I was like, she's back in London. And it's quite the thing. And she's saying, can I play these on the tour? And I was like, oh yes, if it kills me, the Japanese are going to freak out.
Fantastic. So the tour will consist of Charlotte playing the scissors in all the arenas around the UK.
Charlotte will be playing scissors. Australians are going to find it a bit, g'day mate, you got a scissor player there, man. What's all that about? And the Japanese will freak out. The Japanese should probably end up being a bigger star in Japan than me afterwards, I would have thought. But if we get to the song, eventually we get to the tune. It was one of the days where I got into the studio and David just closed his laptop and turned around and said, have you got any riffs? And I was like, oh, what kind? And he went, just guitar riff, anything. Have you got any? And I went, And I just sit there for a bit, and I had the riff. And he said, yeah. And we listened to, he said, oh, it sounds like Can. And we listened to Can for a bit, and then our engineer, Emre, who happens to be an incredible drummer, kind of got on the kit, and we jammed it out for a couple of hours. And then I went home. Dave got stuck into it, and he came back the next day, and they'd put more drums on it, and then someone had put bass on it that I'd never met, and it was kind of like, then we got stuck into it, and it became this thing. So there was a gap where the French bit comes in, so the gap was there for about a year. And when it came to finishing off the record, he was saying, what are we going to put in this gap? And I said, well, I hear spoken word. I don't know what it is, but I hear some spoken word. And he was like, really? And we discussed that for a bit. And I said, I hear it in French. I don't know why. And I don't know why that came to me. And he dug through his files what he's got on his computer, and he'd found this thing which was from a French jazz gig in the 50s, and it was an announcement in French, and it was a woman saying, as I remember, "Please stay in your seats. The act that you've came to see will be along shortly." And the tone of it sounded right. And we put it in as a sample, and we left it there for a bit. Then it came to, well, we can't clear the sample, so we're going to have to get somebody to do something. And he knew Charlotte, called Charlotte. She came to the studio. She did her thing. Nobody speaks French. I don't know what she was saying, right?
Right.
Not a clue. I get back to, so we do it, and it's great. And then someone says, "What is she saying?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And someone says, "Well, we better check, just in case." "How well do you know this woman?" And I thought, "Nothing matter." So I had to get one of the girls in the office to get their mum, who was a French teacher, to translate it. And it's about the end of the world. And I was like, oh, I don't really do the end of the world. You know what I mean? And the last line in what she says, which is repeated twice, says, hold on, or hold hands or something. This is the end of the world. If I could change one thing on the record, I would get her to redo that and say, this is not the end of the world. But as it stands, it's like, there you go. And it just it fit, you know what I mean? I must say, when I played it to my French record label, they were ecstatic. They were like, "Noel, you are going to be famous in France." And I was like, great, I finally get a chateau in the south somewhere. Finally, after shit kicking it for all these years. So funnily enough, that's going to be a single in France. And I'll be destined to do French TV shows from now on for the next 2 years.
She Taught Me How to Fly. It's the 5th track on the brand new album, Who Built the Moon? We were talking earlier on about the album being upbeat, and it continues at a pace with this, which is just great, and all the different elements are really exciting. I one listen, I was really fixating on the hi-hat. I think the hi-hat sounds amazing on this record,
well,
and particularly this song. And the guitar kind of reminded me of Bernard Sumner. You were talking about this being an almost 80s album for you, and the guitar solo has a kind of Power, Corruption and Lies era Bernard style on it.
Absolutely. That's the exact thing.
Have you ever played like that before?
Ever?
No.
So we were working on another tune, and it had that, if you listen to the track, it has that pulsing thing, and in the background you hear some thing that we'd created, and we didn't like the tune that we were doing, but we liked this pulsating thing, so we kept that. And he was saying, "What is it saying to you, David?" And I was saying, "It sounds like Blondie." And he said, "Right, let's write a tune for Blondie." That's how it started. And I was like, wow, how does one write a tune for Blondie? Well, by listening to the best of Blondie for a start. And the guitar solo, no one's ever said this to me before. It came to the bit, it needed a guitar solo, and I instantly knew whatever I would play would get knocked back, because I can only play one way, and it's not kind of like what's on that record. And I said, "What kind of thing are you thinking?" And he said, "Play something you can dance to." And I went, "Dance to a guitar solo?" And he went, "Yeah." I mean, who says that? Who dances to guitar solos, right? I mean, many things have been said to me down the years in the studio. Come up with something you can dance to. And I was like, right, okay. Guitar music you can dance to. New Order. Talking Heads, that's it. Kind of went off with my phone. I was like, okay. Let's see if I can not infringe anybody's copyright here, but still making people dance. And initially, Dave didn't like it. And I fought for that, and I was going, no, man, it's part of my roots. It's part of my Manchester thing, you know what I mean? And I love the song. I absolutely love it. And we've been doing it live the last few days on various radio shows around Europe. And because I've now got to accommodate Gem on guitars, there's 2 guitarists, it's got a bit more balls to it. It's a lot more power punk now live. It's really, really great. Again, it's not a melody I would ever dream of coming up with, you know. And it's in a strange key for me, and I love it. I love it. The minute it was taking shape, I instantly thought, this is going to be a great single.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great one for live, for sure.
And it's interesting, the Blondie thing, because there is a kind of Clem Burke aspect to the drums.
Yeah.
There's some great kind of Clem Burke style fills, which sound brilliant.
Well, I mean, the way I always work anyway, this is one constant, I think. It's like, if I'm writing a song and someone says, sounds a bit like Brian Prothero, or something like that, I will go, right, well, let's make it sound exactly like that then, and other people would go, oh, so I was like, okay, well, let's make it sound less like that. But my thing is, if we're going to go there, let's go there, and but it's funny, all my mates, guys, kind of were like, yeah, it's pretty good, all my girlfriends were like, this is amazing, where have you come up with this? So girls love it, and I can't wait to play it live in front of them.
Have people been dancing to the guitar solo?
Well, I don't get to play it, so I've not. And Gem can cut some rug. I've seen him do it, but no, really. But people can. If people are air guitaring to it while dancing to it, I'll be pretty pleased. Yeah.
Excellent. Those are the instructions. Make Noel's dreams come true. And then, for the first time on the new album, things calmed things down for a little bit with Be Careful What You Wish For. And you talked about this earlier on, and this has a really strong hypnotic quality to it. It's quite dreamy.
So I was, this is one that was started in Belfast. I started this song unwittingly. I was warming up to sing something else, and I was in David's house, and I had that 2-note thing on the guitar, boom, 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 and didn't have any words, and I was doing the let's get my voice in shape. Unbeknown to me, he'd recorded it upstairs, and then by the time I'd finished, I think I was singing Keep On Reaching, like a very early version of it. By the time I got upstairs, he'd put a drum machine on it, the drum machine, and he said, oh, listen to this, and I was like, was that me a minute ago? And he said, yeah. He said, we should do something like this. And I was thinking, David Holmes is just making this up as he goes along. He's literally just making it up as he goes along. It's brilliant. And again, it's like the 2-note thing that went around for ages. And I was, the first 2 verses are a message to my children about be careful, chase fame, money, drugs, all that kind of thing. And then he said, just put it out there. Just write as many verses as you can, like Dylan. Just keep going and keep going. And I wrote so many verses for that song. And it was really long at one point. And I was saying to him, this can't be 9 minutes long, and we edited it down. And then this is where Wycie, a beautiful singer from Marseille, makes an appearance on the record. She does the high spooky voodoo things on Fort Knox. But the day we met her, she came to do Be Careful What You Wish For, and the story goes, she's walking through a market in South London buying jewellery, and this girl looks so striking. She looks like a character from Star Wars. It's unbelievable. And the woman who was selling her the jewellery said, oh, you're amazing, what do you do? And she said, I'm from Marseille, I'm in London trying to get to the music business. And she said, oh, I've got a friend of a friend who happens to be making a record at the moment. I think they're looking for singers. And so this friend of this woman gets in touch with the friend who gets in touch with a friend who gets in touch with David and said, they found this girl, she looks amazing. And David says to me one day, oh, this girl's going to pop by, I never met her, she might be great, she might not be, she's going to sing on this track. Honestly, when she walked in, I was like, wow, I don't care what she sings, it's because she's definitely coming on tour. And she kind of like, she's dressed in a kimono with Adidas tracksuit bottoms on and looked like she got off the Millennium Falcon. And I was like, wow. And we got on immediately straight away. And she was like, well, what kind of thing do you want? I was like, I have no idea. She said, what's the song about? And he went through what the song was, was loosely what it was about. She went in and she started singing that refrain. I've got the moment on my phone somewhere. Both me and David kind of both swear at the same time, like, fucking hell. And she's incredible. She's such a vibe. and she's gonna blow people away on tour. And again, it's another thing that's gonna challenge people as well. You know, 'cause I've got 3 girls in the band now. I've got a new backing vocalist, keyboard player called Jessica Greenfield. Hello, Jess, and Charlotte, and YC, and it's going to challenge perceptions of what it is I do. And the challenge for me is on the tour is how do we get Be Careful What You Wish For and Half the World Away, right? That couldn't be more different. How do we get them to work together in the same night and everybody go home happy? So it's going to be a trip, I've got to say.
I think it's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Black and White Sunshine. And where does this come in to the whole making of the record, and also you sing in French?
Singing in French. This started off as another tune which was called The Dentist. And it was called The Dentist because the engineer had just been to the dentist. So the other track was called Dentist. It didn't go anywhere, but we kept the drums, and I just was jamming it out one day and came up with the chords and a loose vibe. I'd say out of all the tracks on the album, this is the most traditional guitar rock pop thing that I do. And why is it called Black and White Sunshine? I have no idea. Why do I say qu'est-ce que c'est in French? It was an inspired moment. It's like I'd writing the lyrics and I was at home and qu'est-ce que c'est, and I don't know, I was a bit reticent as to whether to say that. But I thought, you know, you might as well. You know.
Yeah. You
might as well. This is the time to do it. And I love this track. It sounds great live. It sounds more like the Pistols live, and there's a bit of a nod to the Stones in there. And the riff is very kind of West Coast LA, I suppose. Sounds a bit like R.E.M. actually, if I'm being honest, the guitar riff. But it's driving, you know, the bass riff that comes at the beginning is amazing. And I think it'll be a live favourite for a while.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, Black and White Sunshine, with a lot of the songs, lyrically, I mean, with Black and White Sunshine, it seems there's a combination of both melancholy and celebration. And in quite a few of the songs, there seems to be these two sides that you've often embraced in your words.
I like the line, "These are the glory days for the waifs and strays. You give me love, I give you thanks and praise." But that kind of stuff comes naturally to me. That's just my style of writing, is the sun bursting through the rain clouds, you know. That's kind of what I do, you know. And yeah, when that line dropped out of the sky, "These are the glory days for the waifs and strays," I was like, that's insane. I love that. I don't know where that's come from. And like I say, I think it'll be a big song live. But it's something when a track like that, which is, you know, usually, what track is it? Number 8?
It's number 7.
Number 7. 7's usually the filler, right? 7's usually the one that you struggle with on an album, and it's usually the one that's a cut. So if your track 7 is like that on an album, you're making a pretty good record. It has to be said.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm convinced people are going to love it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because the next track is track 8, which is Interlude, Wednesday Part 1. And earlier on, when we were talking tonight a bit about your audience and, you know, their preconceptions of what you do and how you do it. And, you know, you were saying how there's probably a younger element to your audience who know you for a particular type of thing. But I would have always thought that the people who grew up with you as Oasis were making it big. You know, we were all surrounded by all sorts of music going on. So you mentioned Goldie, you mentioned the Chemical Brothers who you collaborated with. There was trip hop going on. There was what David Holmes was producing going on as well. And
Primal Scream, a perfect example.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. But also the clubs that we went to would be playing soundtrack music between songs from the 60s, between songs from the 80s and the 90s,
Yeah.
they would have little instrumental upbeat numbers that people would dance to that could be from some obscure film soundtrack.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's always been part of what you do to a certain extent. And Wednesday Part 1 illustrates that, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think funny doing the promo for this record so far, and I suddenly realised that the people who are not having this album the most are the people who haven't heard it.
Always, yeah.
Like they've heard the trailer and a bit of Holy Mountain. So up until the other day when It's a Beautiful World came out, that's all they'd heard. People were very, very sure that they were not having this album. And I was like, well, that's fascinating that you're willing to just dismiss it because of what you think it is. And partly that was intentional because the trailer, I put all the most divisive music on that trailer. And but what is slightly bemusing is the people that already hate it, they profess to love John Lennon. They idolise John Lennon. And I was saying to a guy, I guarantee you their grandparents booed Bob Dylan. I guarantee you their grandparents are the ones that drove John Lennon into the arms of New York, never to return, because of his weird misses. Do you know what I mean? And it's just a thing that you've got to deal with, you know. I reckon in the long run, people will adore this record because I think it's got more legs than the other two, for sure. And but you know, there's people who still want to live in 1995, and that's great. But we lived through 1995. You know, there's people who were born in 95 who want to live through that thing. Like I say, they've seen Supersonic and all that, and that's incredible. Unless, of course, you've lived through it, and it's like, well, that's kind of what we did then. It's not what we do now, you know. And I must say to them, if you're in any way mildly disappointed by this record, then the next few years are not going to be fun for you, because there's no going back from here. Do you know what I mean? So when it comes to Wednesday, which was a long piece of music, it was supposed to have vocals on it, and I just couldn't come up with anything because it sounded too French film soundtracky. That's a new genre I've just created there, soundtracky music. And I remember trying to sing something. I was saying to David, what am I going to sing? He just went, be French. And I was like, okay, that's one step too far. You know what I mean? I throw in a French word, we can have some girls on the record, but actually, I'm not singing in French, you know. And, you know, the longer it went on as just this piece of music, it was at the mix that I chopped it into two, and I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Got the second part there and the first part there. It breaks up the kind of galloping nature of the album. If I've got one regret, apart from the French spoken word bit, so I've got two regrets, it would be I would probably move this interlude up to after She Taught Me How to Fly, but I kind of signed off on it on the day, and there it is.
Yeah.
But if anybody's putting a playlist together back at home, stick it after She Taught Me How to Fly and leave the other one where it is, and you know, we can all go on, we're happy.
We're getting through it all now, Noel. We're nearly at the end of the last kind of final few songs. If Love Is the Law, I mean, you mentioned about not being a 60s kind of thing. This is the 60s song, I guess.
There's a track called That's the Way by the Kit Kats. Have you ever heard that?
No.
You should play that. You should play that on your... It's incredible. And it's kind of got... The Kit Kat song has kind of got that Phil Spector girl-boy group thing. And we decided early on we were going to do a track like that no matter what. And I was in the studio one day, and have you ever read The Conqueror by Genesis?
I don't think I've even heard that, no.
Okay.
I'm making a lot of notes tonight. Write
that down. So I'm filling David in on the glories of The Conqueror by Genesis. a sentence which I thought I'd never utter as a young punk back in the day. And there's this kind of driving acoustic feel to it. And of course, David being David says, right, that's it, we're doing a song like that. And I wrote it on a Mellotron. I wrote it on the strings on the Mellotron. I don't even know why I can't even, I mean, I can play the keyboards, like a caveman, but I got that riff. And actually, when that song didn't take very long to write, I think it's always meant to be in existence, because it's one of the songs that when I sat down, we arranged it very, very quickly. I wrote the words and the melody really quickly. That I think that when I write songs that quick, I think, oh, that's been there somewhere. And then obviously the sleigh bells. You can't have a Noel Gallagher record without sleigh bells somewhere. But then we hit a dead end with it, which is where the breakdown bit came from. So anytime we hit a dead end, I always say to Dave, put one of those drop down things that you put in there where it all goes away for a bit and then it'll come back in, and maybe there'll be a moment of inspiration. That was around for a while, and Dave was like, it needs a guitar thing and some lift towards the end. Now, when someone always says that to me, the first thing I always do is call Johnny Marr, right? Because he's one of my oldest friends, and he's very gracious with his time. And not a lot of people know this, but he's got a guitar-shaped phone in his house that only I have the number to. It's like the bat phone, and when it rings, when it glows, red and white, he knows it's me. Picks it up and he says, "The boy wonder, what can I do for you?" And I'm like, "I'm afraid, Batman, it's that time again." And he's making a record that's coming out soon, which I've heard, which is brilliant. And I'll be there tomorrow, And it still blows my mind that he would even, and that I put it on him and said, "Oh, Johnny, can you come and help us with this track?" And I remember before he put the phone down, bring a mouth organ. Now, as much as I love Johnny's guitar playing, which we all do, it's iconic, and that, his mouth organ playing, to me, the thing on Hand in Glove, the original version, is, man, that's it for me. And he arrives down and he played on a few tracks, but the guitars bits didn't really work out, and so it come to doing this. And honestly, he listened to it about 4 times, and he did that guitar thing and then played in the outro, and I said, "Can you play the mouth organ on the outro?" And he says, "Nobody ever asked me to play mouth organ," and he's a brilliant mouth organ player. And I think he did it in 2 takes, and I think if push comes to shove, it might be my favourite moment on the album is listening to him play the mouth organ, because it gives the song a proper lift towards the end. And the song's got a real strong narrative to it. And a friend of mine who's made my first batch of videos in LA is obsessing about it at the moment, and the song that's coming up after this. And he wants to make a film based around these songs. And it sounds not great live, I've got to say at the minute. We'll have to do something with it live. But it's a great song, even if I do say so myself. And
you're going to try and get the harmonica on the live version?
I'm not sure it's going to work this time, because he's about to put a record out, and when I'm on the road, he'll be on the road. But I mean, hopefully we'll come to a festival near you soon if we're both on the same bill. But no, I love playing with Johnny. It's he's the only person that I know who can talk as much as I can, and David was blown away to meet him, and because he's one of the special ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be in a studio with somebody who's that enthusiastic about what you're doing is great. And he was one of the first people to hear it as it was being made, and he was very enthusiastic about it. And of course, I think 2 days later, Weller came along and elbowed himself onto the Holy Mountain.
Right, so he plays organ on Holy Mountain, is that right?
Yeah, well, I didn't ask Paul to play on that song, because he's my neighbour, right, and we kind of see each other regularly. In fact, I seen him the other night. We were both going to the Boots at the same time. And he, actually, funnily enough, I was with my 2 lads, your 2 brothers, and he ruffled Sonny's hair. I went, all right, Mush, how old are you now? And Sonny looked at him and said, do I know you? And Weller's going, he gets that from you. And so we were, I played him Holy Mountain, and he was like freaking out about it. And he said, I'm playing organ on that track, so how long you got left in the studio? And I was like, I think we've got 2 more days. And he was like, well, I'm playing on it, and that's the end of it. And he kind of came down with his organ and did his bit. And he's great with things like that. Well, he'll give you a real boost if you ever needed one. And same with Johnny. They loved it.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's nice to have friends, isn't it?
Well, like that it is, yeah. But actually, it is good, because sometimes if your ego runs away with you, you kind of know your place when you're with those two. You know what I mean? Because it's like very much the junior partner in this co-op that we've got going on. You know what I mean? They don't ask me to play on their records. Oh, no, Weller does, to be fair. But yeah, Johnny doesn't ask me to play on his records, but I kind of like, get them to play on mine. But yeah, there you go.
No, it sounds great. The Man Who Built the Moon is the next song. I guess you could call it the title track. Is it the title track?
It was going to be the first track on the album had it not been for Fort Knox.
Right, because you can hear a kind of connection to Fort Knox, can't you? In the pace of it.
There's the pace of it. There's the strings are really kind of James Bond-esque, as somebody said. This is not a James Bond theme tune. They're going to have to write a film around this tune.
That is a really good suggestion.
Yeah.
Because I thought a similar thing, because it really conjures up John Barry, Thunderball particularly to me.
Yeah.
David and whoever he got with him did a fantastic
this is
job.
David at his film soundtrack best.
Yeah. And the choral bits as well.
Choral bits are... Oh, the low things. That's me. So tracked about 100 times in his front room in Belfast. We always meant to get a choir on it doing the deep.
Yeah.
Oh, and I tracked it about, I don't know, spent an hour doing all these things. And in the end, we were just like, we were either out of budget or out of time, and it was like, it's going to have to stay like that. But how the words to that came about was we had the song, and there was no words to speak of, and so we've decamped to London by this point, and he's saying, you're gonna write this song or what? And I was like, yeah, I'm focusing more on the upbeat stuff because it's so new, and this is a bit more traditional, so I was kind of leaving that till the end, and I didn't know what it was suggesting to me. So every day I would get the tube to work, and I would get off at Lambeth Street tube station, and as you come down the platform you have to get in a lift to go up, and at the opening of that lift was the film poster for that film, The Hateful Eight, the Quentin Tarantino film. That's how long ago this was, right? And I hadn't seen the film at this point, and it just dawned on me one day. I thought, that's what I'm going to write about. I'm going to write about those guys in the poster. So it's about this gang of desperados who have, like, the Man Who Built the Moon being one of them, who arrives on a knackered horse. And it was a moment of inspiration. So I kind of wrote the verses over a couple of day period. And then I got to the chorus, and David Holmes made me write 8 choruses for this song. Because every one that I wrote, he just went, Oasis. Like, oh, and he said, no. Next one, that's High Flying Birds. Another one, that's a cross between Oasis and High Flying Birds. and it just kept going, that's the Beatles. And I was like, so on the day that I was in another studio, David wasn't around that day, and I was in another studio, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I think I've come up with a great chorus, which is what ends up on the record. And as I was singing it, I thought, well, this doesn't sound like anything I've ever done, so he's going to love it. And if he doesn't love it, I'm scrapping the song anyway, because I'm not having it now. I've had enough. And luckily, the minute he heard it, he went, see? That's it. And it was so annoying that he was right, that he'd pushed me to do... the 8 choruses took about 4 months, right, to come up with. Yeah. It's like... Because the verses were all a tale of these people in this poster, and the narrative couldn't get lost in the thing, and it was such a struggle to get there. But annoyingly, he was right. And I gotta say, and then he did the strings on it and the choir bits, and it's dark, man. It would have been great if it was the first track on the album, but unfortunately Fort Knox couldn't come anywhere else, because if Fort Knox was the last track, it wouldn't have been a thing. Yeah, it would have felt like it was tagged on the end of an album with no singing on it, and they'd run out of ideas. But if it's first, it's a statement. And then I couldn't really find out where to put Man Who Built the Moon anywhere, and then it kind of it's fitting in a way that it's last, I think. Yeah, definitely. And the title "Who Built the Moon" came from the song "The Man Who Built the Moon." Right. And I was like, "Who built the moon? That'd be a great title for a song." Yeah. So this character that you'd created by looking at a film poster every day by chance. Yeah. And then when I seen the film, I thought, you know what? I am a genius, because it could be on the end credits of that film. Right. You know. So my mate, who's a filmmaker in LA, is obsessing about it at the minute and wants to write an entire box set around it. He's got all the words and the images, and this guy, the man who built the moon, is on this. You know, we should have never left town in the first place. You know, I don't even know where those words come from. I was just kind of, I guess I was in such a state of anger at having to write this chorus again that yeah, that's what I came up with. Fascinating though. Yeah. It's all drawing to a close. We've got one more song to play. End credits, Wednesday Part 2. We've got 2 more songs. Yeah, there is a bonus, which we could talk about as well. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. That is a fascinating story. Yeah. To me, anyway. Okay, excellent. So, in terms of the interlude, so Wednesday Part 1 and Part 2 originally were together. Well, it was Wednesday was one long song, which is about 4 and a bit minutes, and I thought it was too long. So where the first interlude was, that's where it was, all 4 minutes of it. And listening to the running order, I was like, it's too long. It's too long an interlude. And I just thought, oh, hang on a minute, there's a definite, maybe we can cut that into 2, maybe do a bit more work on it. And I thought it's a fitting end to the album, where The Man Who Built the Moon is like the epilogue, and Fort Knox is the overture. And this is the bit where you're walking out of the cinema. You know, and you're kind of looking back to see if there's anything else that you've missed. And the end credits are going up. And that was it. I like it that it ends like that, because I think it's a satisfying end. I think if it would have ended with just that click on the Man Who Built the Moon, it wouldn't have been enough for me. Well, it wasn't enough for me when I was hearing it. And yeah, moving the splitting it into 2 really worked, I think. And there's actually a bonus track called Dead in the Water. So at some point during the Chasing Yesterday tour, we had a big break, and the first thing back was gig in Ireland. So I'm at that. Oh, there's something going on in Ireland. So I'm at the RTE studios in Dublin, and I'm doing a radio session for RTE Radio, and the single at the time was "Dying of the Light." So I'm doing an acoustic version of "Dying of the Light," which is on YouTube. Brilliant version. And in between the takes, some guy's faffing around with a microphone, and at the beginning of the track you can hear the engineer saying, "I'd love it if you could do it one more time," and he's fanning around. And I, about no more than a few days before I've written this song called Dead in the Water, fell out of the sky. Took me, my wife and the 2 lads were away in Scotland, and I wrote that song in under 2 hours. And I hadn't played it to anyone. I just sang it at home. I thought, yeah, it's good. So I went to sat with headphones on, and the sound in the room was so amazing that while he was running around with this mic, I just started singing it for myself. And my keyboard player was kind of over the other side of the room, and he's one of those annoying people who can't help but play along with you, right? And I'm kind of in the moment, and I'm willing him to shut up. And I'm kind of like, you know, and but he's really brilliant, and he was kind of working the chords out as we went along. He'd never heard it. He didn't know what was going on. So I'm singing this song, and at the end of the thing, and he says, "Is that new?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he says, "Oh, it's great," and I say, "Oh, it'll do," you know, kind of thing. Then we go into Dying of the Light, forget all about it. Fast forward, we're in the office, the album has been finished. The inevitable question goes, have we got any bonus material? And I'm saying, we didn't do any B-sides. There's a lot of stuff left over, as a matter of fact. There might be another 5 or 6 tunes left over that never got finished. But there's no finished songs. One of the guys in my office, Raymondo, happened to be there in Dublin. He said, what about that song you did that day in Dublin? I was like, what song? And he went, the one about the water. What was it? The water. And I went, oh yeah. I said, no, I'm not recording that. It's a different thing. It's like, and he said, no, they recorded it that day. And I was like, get out. And he said, no, I'm sure they recorded it. So he got in touch with the studios and they said, oh yeah, we'd recorded it. So they sent it to us. And honestly, my jaw hit the floor when I heard it. And what is special to me about that song is I'm singing it for myself. I'm not aware it's been recorded. So it's a real personal moment for me. Whereas if I know it's been recorded live, you're kind of singing it for someone else. And so it starts off really slow. I'm not sure of the words at the beginning, the first verse. And then it kind of gets into its stride. And as I was listening to it, I was thinking, it kind of has to go on the album because I want to play it live. And David was like, well, it's not really part of the thing though, is it? I was like, no, but still, my name's on the front, so it's literally got nothing to do with you. So it's live. It's as live as live can be. It's as pure an expression of it's the complete opposite to everything else on that album, which is about the production and the vibe and the take after retake and fiddling and knocking it into shape and starting again. This is just one take, pure expression, like a quiet moment. Honestly, when I heard it, I was like, wow. That's I was like, if I wasn't arrogant enough already, my God.
But it's interesting because at the end of it, your keyboard player does ask you, is that done? And your reply does sound quite humble, I think. You say, yeah, it's...
He says, is that new? And I say, what? And he says, is it new? And I say, yeah. And he says, good. And I went, yeah, it'll do.
Yeah. But you see, the way you say that seems unlike you in the presentation you bring to us.
If I thought that these millions of people were going to listen to it, I'd be saying, and isn't it incredible? So that when you listen to it, if you're at all interested, you're catching me as really as I am. You know what I mean? I'm not playing it for anyone. I'm not playing the part. I'm just a guy from a council estate with the guitars written this song who's singing for himself. And it's a perfect moment. And the temptation has been, or was, while we had the time, is to re-record it. And I was like, you know what? Moments like that do not come along in recorded music, and they should be embraced. If I went to re-record that song with all the bells and whistles, I'd ruin it. And it's interesting that some Oasis fans, when I put out what's it called, that brilliant song I wrote, If I Had a Gun and The Dying of the Light, they're all like, they're overproduced and they should be stripped back. I'm there whinging. And somebody said the other day, what have you put that on the record for? Why didn't you record it properly? You could have put the bells and whistles on it. I'm like, you know what? I feel like strangling these people sometimes. So it's like, I tell you what, you go make an album, and they see how difficult it is. But I'm not going to re-record it. I'm going to resist, I think. It's just going to be a live moment. I'm going to perform it live. It's live on the record, and that'll do for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm going to play it in just a sec. I mean, obviously, and it starts with this nice little conversation as well. But you've mentioned David a lot tonight. You've also mentioned that, this is the way you want to work in future. So is this the way you're going to work in future?
Well, I'm not sure. We haven't spoke about making another record, but I think we'd be foolish not to at least attempt it. It took 4 years to make it, more or less, best part of 3 years. So I'm not sure I could sit around for 3 years waiting for it to happen, because surely it can't be this good the second time round, or even this easy. So it might be a thing of doing another record and having them run concurrently again. I don't know, but I definitely think that what we've done, that we've got half an album left over, and some of it is great. We ran out of time finishing it. There's one tune in particular that David, he said, you are mental not putting this song on this record. And it's just there's something about it that doesn't sit right with me, but I'll finish it. But I think it would be foolish not to at least try. And I love working with Dave, and he's a beautiful guy, and it was a proper experience, I got to say.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm so pleased it's worked out this way. This is the part of you that I've always wanted to hear more of.
Yeah, me too, yeah. You know, because it's very, when you've got the talent of sitting down and picking up a guitar, and there it is, why are you going to waste 4 years of your life playing a synth that you can't even play, or, you know, well, stand it on its head and see what it sounds like. You're not going to do, I'm the most impatient man in the world. And, but this has opened a door where it's kind of like, well, if it's all like this, you know, and if it annoys this many people, I mean, I'm kind of a bit perverse in the way that I'm like, go a bit further next time. Maybe do an album in German with some German people.
Fantastic, Noel. Thanks so much for coming in tonight.
No worries, man.
Superb stuff.
Radio X.